I never imagined I'd catch my husband in bed with my son's fiancée 3 weeks before the wedding. What started as a quiet Friday night at home turned into the most devastating discovery of my life. 4 years of lies, secret meetings, stolen moments under my own roof. And when I finally uncovered the shocking truth they were planning next, it destroyed everything I thought I knew about love, family, and trust. This isn't just another cheating story. This is a mother's worst nightmare that ends with a wedding day no one will ever forget. You won't believe how deep the betrayal went, or the final secret that left me questioning if any of it was ever real. Watch until the end. You'll be speechless.
My name is Elena Thompson, 52 years old, 28 years married, one son, Jake, 25, and about to walk down the aisle in 3 weeks. I live in a split-level colonial in Bellevue, just east of Seattle. Big backyard, double garage, the kind of house that screams, "We made it," when you drive past. White picket fence? No. But we had the American dream version. Good jobs, college fund paid off, family vacations to Cannon Beach every summer, Christmas cards with everyone smiling and matching flannel. I thought we were solid. The kind of couple people said they've got it together, while secretly wishing their own marriage looked half as steady. I was wrong. It was a Friday in May. The kind of perfect Pacific Northwest evening where the sun hangs low and golden and the air smells like cut grass and distant saltwater. I'd pulled a double shift at Overlake Medical Center, nurse practitioner in the cardiology unit, so by the time I clocked out at 6:30, my feet ached and my scrubs smelled faintly of antiseptic and someone else's fear. All I wanted was a glass of Pinot Grigio, bare feet on the cool kitchen tile, and maybe an episode of whatever mindless drama was trending on Netflix. I didn't announce myself when I walked in. Why would I? This was my house. My keys jingled softly as I dropped them in the ceramic bowl by the door, the one Jake made in third-grade art class, still lopsided after all these years. The foyer light was on, but the rest of the downstairs felt dim, hushed. Jake's car wasn't in the driveway. He'd texted earlier that he was running tuxedo fittings with his groomsmen, probably grabbing beers afterward. Mark's SUV sat in its usual spot in the garage. I assumed he was in his study, hunched over spreadsheets, or watching golf highlights with the sound low. I kicked off my Dansko clogs, flexed my toes against the hardwood, and padded toward the kitchen. That's when I heard it. A laugh. Not Jake's deep chuckle, not mine. A woman's laugh, soft, intimate, the kind that comes after a shared secret. It drifted from the hallway, from the guest room we kept ready for visiting relatives or the occasional Airbnb overflow when Jake's friends crashed here during college breaks. I stopped moving. Mark's voice followed, low and warm, the way he used to talk to me when we were first married and the world felt brand new. "You know I can't stop thinking about you. Not for a second." Another giggle, light, teasing, achingly familiar. My pulse kicked up hard. I told myself it could be nothing, a phone call, a Zoom, a friend's daughter dropping by. But my body knew better. My stomach twisted into something cold and tight. I moved down the hallway like I was walking through water, every step deliberate and silent. The guest room door was ajar maybe 3 inches, warm lamplight spilling out in a thin gold stripe across the floor. I could smell her perfume before I saw them, something expensive and floral, the same scent she wore to every family dinner, the one I'd complimented her on last Christmas. Sophie, Jake's fiancée.
26, bright, ambitious, the girl who'd won over my entire family in under 6 months, the one who'd cried in my arms when her mother bailed on the engagement party, the one who called me mom without hesitation. Sophie. I leaned forward just enough to see. They were on the edge of the queen bed, the one with the blue quilt I'd bought at Pottery Barn 3 years ago. Mark sat with his back to me, shoulders broad under his navy polo. Sophie straddled his lap, facing him, her sundress hiked up around her thighs. His hands rested on her hips, fingers splayed possessively. Her arms were looped around his neck, forehead pressed to his. They were kissing, slow, deep, practiced, like people who'd done this 100 times. I couldn't breathe. Sophie pulled back slightly, just enough to speak against his mouth. We have to be careful. Jake's picking up the rings tomorrow. Mark's thumbs traced circles on her skin. I know. 3 more weeks, then it's done. She smiled, that dazzling, Instagram-perfect smile, and kissed him again. I backed away so fast I almost tripped over the hall runner. My hand flew to my mouth to trap the sound that wanted to escape. I retreated to the kitchen, legs shaking, and gripped the edge of the granite island until my knuckles turned white. The wine bottle was already open. Mark must have started it earlier. I poured a full glass with trembling hands, liquid sloshing over the rim. I didn't care. I drank half of it in one swallow, the cold bite doing nothing to stop the burning behind my eyes. The engagement photo on the fridge stared back at me. Jake and Sophie on a beach in Maui last year, wind in their hair, laughing. Mark and I stood behind them, arms around each other, proud parents of the groom-to-be. I looked happy in that picture. I looked like I belonged. I set the glass down carefully, too carefully. My reflection in the dark window above the sink looked like a stranger, pale, hollow-eyed, mouth pressed into a thin line. How long? The question lodged in my throat like broken glass. How long had this been happening in my house, under my roof? While I was working night shifts, while Jake was traveling for his tech job, while I planned centerpieces and approved bridesmaid dresses, and told Sophie she was the daughter I never had. I didn't cry. Not yet. Something sharper took over. Cold, calculating, almost clinical. The same part of me that could stay steady when a patient coded, when a family got the worst news of their life. I wiped the spilled wine, rinsed the glass, put it back in the cabinet exactly where it belonged. I straightened the tea towel on the oven handle. Order, control, anything to keep the scream locked inside. Then I heard footsteps on the stairs.
Mark appeared in the doorway, hair slightly mussed, collar open, looking every bit the relaxed husband coming down for a drink. Hey, babe, you're home early. I turned slowly, smiled the way I'd smiled at 1,000 patients who were scared and trying to hide it. Yeah, shift ended sooner than expected. He crossed the kitchen, kissed my cheek like he always did. I smelled her on him. Floral, sweet, wrong. You okay? You look tired. Just long day, I said. My voice sounded normal. How was that possible? He opened the fridge, grabbed a beer. Sophie stopped by earlier, dropped off some wedding favors she picked up. Cute girl, huh? Jake's lucky. I nodded. Very lucky. He popped the cap, took a long drink, eyes on me over the bottle. You sure you're okay? I pressed my palm flat against the wood, feeling nothing but cool paint and the faint vibration of the house settling around me. 3 weeks until the wedding. 3 weeks until I decided what came next. But one thing was already certain. The woman who walked into this house an hour ago was gone. The woman standing here now, she wasn't going to let this slide. She wasn't going to smile and pretend. She was going to find out exactly how deep the betrayal ran. And when she did, nothing in this family would ever look the same again. They say hindsight is 20/20, but mine feels more like a rearview mirror cracked down the middle, every shard reflecting a different lie I told myself. After that Friday in the guest room, I didn't sleep. I lay next to Mark in our king-size bed, listening to his steady breathing while my mind replayed the scene on loop. Sophie's sundress bunched at her hips, Mark's hands claiming what wasn't his, the casual way they talked about waiting 3 more weeks like the wedding was just an inconvenient checkpoint on their private timeline. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning lazy circles above us and started cataloging. Not in rage, at least not yet, but like I was charting symptoms on a patient chart. When did this start? What had I missed? Because nurses don't miss signs. We're trained to notice the subtle ones before the crash cart has to roll in.
The first real memory that surfaced wasn't dramatic. It was ordinary, painfully ordinary. Last summer, right after Jake proposed on that Maui beach, Sophie started coming over more. At first it made sense. Wedding planning is a full-time job, especially when the bride's own mother is AWOL and the groom's mom is a workaholic who still wants to be involved. Sophie would show up on Saturday mornings with coffee from Starbucks and a binder full of Pinterest sports. We'd sit at the kitchen island, flipping through fabric swatches and debating whether blush or ivory was the better accent color. Mark would wander in, pour himself a mug, lean against the counter, and offer opinions nobody asked for. "Go with the blush," he'd say. "It's softer, matches your eyes." I'd laughed then, teased him about turning into a wedding expert. He'd wink at me, kiss the top of my head, and head back to his study. Normal, domestic, safe. But looking back, there were the little detours. By October, Sophie started dropping by on weeknights, alone. She'd text me first. "Hey Mom, mind if I swing by? Need your opinion on the menu cards?" And I'd say, "Sure, come over, I'm home." Jake was traveling a lot then, closing deals for his software company in San Francisco or Austin. He'd be gone 3-4 days at a stretch. Sophie said she hated being alone in their downtown condo, that it felt too quiet. So she'd arrive around 7, still in her work clothes, tailored blazer, pencil skirt, heels that clicked on the hardwood like tiny announcements. Mark would emerge from his study, surprised but pleased. "Hey kiddo, Jake out of town again?" "Yeah," she'd sigh, dramatic little pout. "He's living the airport life." I'd make tea or pour wine. We'd talk about centerpieces, boutonnieres, the string quartet versus DJ debate. Mark would join us for a glass, then another. He'd sit at the head of the island, Sophie to his right, me to his left. Sometimes his knee would brush hers under the counter. I noticed once, thought it was accidental. He shifted away quickly, apologized with his eyes. I let it go. One night in November, it rained hard, the kind of Pacific Northwest downpour that turns streets into rivers. Sophie had driven over to show me photos of potential honeymoon spots, Bora Bora versus Santorini. We were on the living room couch, phones out, when the power flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the house. Mark appeared with his phone flashlight. "Generator's in the garage, but it'll take a minute. You two okay?" Sophie laughed nervously. "I hate the dark." He handed her his phone. "Here, use this. I'll be right back." He was gone maybe 10 minutes, long enough for the rain to drum harder against the windows. When the lights came back on, Sophie was still on the couch, but Mark's study door was open. I walked past on my way to the kitchen and saw him inside, leaning against his desk, phone to his ear. He ended the call quickly when he saw me. "Everything good?" I asked. "Yeah, just checking on a claim that came in late." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? Later that same night, after Sophie left, I woke up around 2:30 a.m. to use the bathroom. The hallway was dark, but I heard footsteps, soft, careful, coming down the stairs. I froze in the doorway of our bedroom, heart thudding. Mark's voice, barely a whisper. "You shouldn't be here." Then Sophie's reply, so quiet I almost missed it. "I couldn't wait until tomorrow." A long silence, then the faint creak of the guest room door opening and closing. I stood there, nightgown clinging to my skin from sudden sweat, telling myself I'd misheard. Maybe she'd forgotten her phone. Maybe she needed water. Maybe she was sleepwalking. People do strange things when they're stressed about weddings. I went back to bed. Didn't wake Mark. Didn't go downstairs. I pulled the covers up to my chin and stared at the ceiling again, promising myself I'd ask her casually in the morning. I never did. Because the next day she texted me a heart emoji and, "Thanks for last night, Mom, you're the best." And I replied, "Anytime, sweetheart," like nothing had happened, like I hadn't heard what I'd heard. There were more moments after that, small, easy to dismiss. The way Mark's face lit up when her name appeared on his phone, the inside jokes they shared at family dinners. Remember that time in the kitchen with the wine opener? That made Jake roll his eyes good-naturedly. The Christmas Eve when she gave Mark a monogrammed leather portfolio for all your important papers, and he hugged her a beat too long while I watched from the kitchen doorway, wine glass in hand. I told myself it was affection, fatherly, protective. He'd always been good with Jake's girlfriends, welcoming, generous, the cool dad. Sophie just seemed to bring it out more. She was charming. She listened when he talked about his insurance business. She laughed at his dad jokes. She made him feel seen.
I was busy, exhausted, 48-hour stretches in the hospital, coming home smelling like hospital coffee and grief. Maybe I'd let the closeness slide because it was easier than questioning it. Maybe I liked that someone else was keeping Mark company while I was saving lives. Maybe I was grateful. God, how pathetic that sounds now. But the night I caught them in the guest room, all those ignored clues snapped into focus, like puzzle pieces I'd pretended weren't there. The late-night footsteps, the closed study doors, the perfume that lingered on his collar some mornings when I kissed him goodbye, the way he'd started wearing cologne again after years of just soap and aftershave. I didn't confront him that weekend. I couldn't. Not yet. Instead, I watched. Saturday morning, Sophie came over to finalize the seating chart. She breezed in wearing yoga pants and a cropped hoodie, hair in a messy bun, looking every bit the innocent bride-to-be. She hugged me tight. "Morning, Mom. Sleep okay?" Like a rock, I lied. Mark joined us at the dining table, coffee in hand, casual as ever. They sat close, closer than necessary, pointing at names on the chart, laughing about Great Aunt Linda's +1 drama. I excused myself to check on the linens upstairs, but really I stood at the top of the stairs and listened. Their voices dropped. "You're killing me in those pants," Mark murmured. Sophie giggled. "Behave, she's right upstairs." "She's always right upstairs," he said. "Doesn't mean she sees." I pressed my back against the wall, nails digging into my palms. That was the moment I stopped pretending. I wasn't going to ask questions and hope for innocent answers. I wasn't going to cry and beg for explanations. I was going to gather evidence, quietly, methodically, the way I'd chart vitals before calling code. Because this wasn't just an affair. This was happening in my home, with my son's future wife. And the longer I let it continue, the more it poisoned everything I thought I knew about the people I loved most.
3 weeks until the wedding. I had 3 weeks to decide how much truth this family could handle, and I was done ignoring the signs. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't even wake Mark when he came to bed that Friday night, smelling faintly of her perfume and the guest room candle we kept for romantic evenings. Instead, I lay there pretending to sleep, eyes open in the dark, planning. Saturday morning, I played the part. Made pancakes, blueberry, Jake's favorite, even though he wasn't home yet. Mark came downstairs in his weekend uniform, gray sweatpants, faded Seahawks t-shirt, hair still damp from the shower. He kissed my temple like always. "Smells amazing, babe." I smiled, figured we could use some comfort food before the chaos of next week. He poured coffee, sat at the island, scrolled his phone. Casual, relaxed. The same man who'd had his hands on my future daughter-in-law less than 12 hours earlier. I waited until he went upstairs to change for his golf game with buddies. The moment the bedroom door clicked shut, I moved. His phone was on the counter, charging. Black iPhone 14, case cracked on one corner from when he dropped it last winter at the hardware store. Password hadn't changed in years. Our anniversary, 0714. I teased him about it once, said it was sentimental. He'd grinned and said, "Some things don't need updating." I opened it. The screen lit up. Notifications, texts, emails. I ignored the junk and went straight to messages. Sophie's thread was near the top, labeled simply with a heart emoji and her first name. No last name, no attempt to hide it, just Sophie. I tapped. The thread went back 4 years. 4 years. The oldest message was from July 2021. Jake had just graduated from UW, and we'd thrown him a backyard party. Sophie wasn't even in the picture yet. She and Jake wouldn't meet until the following spring at a mutual friend's rooftop thing downtown. But there she was, texting Mark. Sophie. "Hey, Mr. Thompson. Thanks again for the internship advice. You were right. Applied to that marketing firm in Bellevue. Fingers crossed." Mark. "Call me Mark, kiddo, and you're welcome. You've got the brains for it. Let me know if you need a recommendation letter." Innocent. Helpful. fatherly.
Then the tone shifted, slowly, subtly, like a tide coming in. By October 2021, Sophie, got the internship starting next month. Drinks to celebrate? Proud of you. Name the place. They met at a bar in Kirkland. She sent a selfie, her in a black dress, hair down, glass raised. Caption, cheers to new beginnings. You clean up nice. The emoji was the first crack. Small, easy to miss if you weren't looking. By spring 2022, when Jake and Sophie officially started dating, the messages had already turned flirty. Photos started appearing. Nothing explicit at first, just her in workout clothes after yoga, thought you'd like the view, or him sending a shot of his new golf clubs, need a caddy. She'd reply with laughing emojis, then heart eyes. Then came the escalation. Summer 2022, Jake was in Denver for a 2-week training seminar. Mark and Sophie exchanged messages every day. Sophie, miss you already. House feels empty without you sneaking over. Careful, walls have ears. Then come make some noise. There were photos after that. Her in lingerie, black lace, taken in what looked like our guest bathroom. Him shirtless in his study, late at night, captioned, waiting for my favorite distraction. I had to stop scrolling for a second. My hands were shaking so hard the phone blurred. I set it down, walked to the sink, ran cold water over my wrists, breathed. In through the nose, out through the mouth. The same technique I used when a patient's heart rate tanked on the monitor. When I picked it up again, I kept going. By 2023, the messages were explicit. Detailed plans. Meet me at the Hilton in Tacoma next Thursday. Jake's in Portland. Hotel receipts forwarded. Use the corporate card, he won't notice. Naked photos, hers first, then his. Videos too, short clips I couldn't bring myself to play. Not yet. And the words. Her. Jake's sweet, but he's predictable. You make me feel dangerous, alive. Him. You're everything I've been missing for years. One day we'll figure this out, just us. One day. The phrase echoed. What did one day look like to them? I switched to photos, hidden album, passcode protected, but same anniversary digits. Inside, dozens of images, dates stamped, selfies of them together, arms around each other in parking lots, in hotel rooms, once even in our backyard hammock while I was at work. Timestamp, 2:17 p.m. on a Tuesday last August. I remembered that day. I texted Mark asking if he wanted me to pick up Ty on the way home. He'd replied, sure babe, working late though. Working late. I opened notes next, a locked one titled Reminders. Inside, a single line. Sophie, insurance review 315. Policy number update pending. My policy. The one Mark insisted we increase coverage on last fall. Just in case, he'd said. We're getting older, better safe. I felt the room tilt. I didn't copy everything right then, too risky with him upstairs. Instead, I airdropped the most damning threads and photos to my own phone, then deleted the airdrop record. I closed every app, locked the phone, placed it exactly where he'd left it, screen facing down, charging cable aligned perfectly. When he came back downstairs in khakis and a polo, golf bag slung over his shoulder, he looked at me and frowned. You okay? You're pale. Headache, I said. Probably dehydration. Long week. He kissed my forehead. Take it easy today. I'll be back by 4. Want me to bring dinner? I smiled. Thin, brittle. That'd be nice. He left. The house went quiet. I sat at the kitchen island for a long time, staring at the spot where his phone had been. My reflection in the window looked like someone I didn't recognize, eyes wide, mouth set in a hard line. 4 years. My son had been dating her for 2.5. Mark had been sleeping with her longer than Jake had even known her name. And somewhere in those messages, buried under all the lust and lies, was the promise of one day. I didn't know what came after the wedding. I didn't know how far they'd planned. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. This wasn't just an affair. This was a long game. And I was the obstacle they were waiting to move out of the way. I opened my own phone, opened notes, started a new one, titled it simply Evidence. First entry. Date: May 17, 2025. Caught M and S in guest room. Physical intimacy. Audio possible if I record next time. Messages. Thread since 2021. Explicit content. Hotel meets. Photos or videos in hidden album. Reference to figuring this out and one day. Insurance policy increased October 2024. My beneficiary status unchanged, but timing suspicious. I hit save. Then I stood up, walked to the hallway, and stared at the guest room door. It was closed now. Locked, probably. I didn't touch the knob. Not yet. But I would. Because the truth doesn't hide forever. Not when someone stops looking away. And I had stopped looking away. The calendar didn't care about my discovery. It kept flipping pages. May turned into late May, then early June, and every sunrise brought us one day closer to the wedding. I woke up each morning with the same hollow ache in my chest, like someone had scooped out everything soft and left only bone. But I got up. I showered. I put on clean scrubs or jeans and a blouse. I smiled when people asked how the wedding prep was going. I answered texts from aunts and cousins with cheerful emojis. I acted like the mother of the groom everyone expected me to be.
Because if I cracked, even a little, the whole performance would collapse. The house became a stage. Caterers dropped off sample menus. Florists delivered mock centerpieces wrapped in cellophane. The living room filled with boxes of favors, tiny succulent plants in gold pots, each tied with a satin ribbon that said, "Love grows here." Ironic. Sophie had chosen them. She'd beamed when she showed me the mock-up last fall. "Isn't it perfect, Mom? Sustainable and sweet." I'd hugged her then, told her it was beautiful. Now, every time I passed those boxes in the hallway, I had to fight the urge to kick them over. Mark kept up his end of the charade flawlessly. He mowed the lawn on Saturdays, waved to neighbors, grilled burgers for the groomsmen when they came over to play poker. He'd catch my eye across the kitchen and say things like, "Can you believe our boy's getting married?" His voice would crack just enough to sound genuine. I'd nod, force a laugh, say, "Time flies." Inside, I was counting the hours until I could stop pretending. Sophie was everywhere. She came over almost daily now. Final dress fitting, last-minute RSVPs, picking up the marriage license downtown. She'd breeze in wearing cut-off shorts and a tank top, hair in a high ponytail, looking so young and radiant it hurt to look at her. She'd hug me every time. "Morning, Mom." Like nothing had changed, like she hadn't been straddling my husband in the guest room 3 weeks ago. I hugged her back, every single time. Because if I pulled away, she'd notice. She'd ask questions. And I wasn't ready for questions yet. One afternoon, we were alone in the dining room, addressing the last of the invitations. The table was covered in cream envelopes, gold calligraphy pens, and a stack of response cards. Classic rock played softly from the Bluetooth speaker. Mark's playlist, always the same Eagles and Fleetwood Mac rotation. He was out running errands, Jake was at work. Just us. Sophie leaned over the table, tongue between her teeth as she wrote an address. She looked up suddenly, eyes bright. "Elena, can I ask you something kind of personal?"
My pen froze mid-stroke. "Of course, sweetheart." She set her pen down, folded her hands. "How did you know Mark was the one? Like, really know? Jake's amazing, but sometimes I wonder if I'm supposed to feel more certain. Does that make sense?" I stared at her. The girl who'd been sleeping with my husband for 4 years was asking me for marriage advice. The absurdity almost made me laugh. Instead, I took a slow breath. "I thought I knew," I said carefully. "We were young, in love, we built a life, raised a son. It felt solid." I paused. "But certainty isn't a feeling that lasts forever. It's a choice you make every day, to stay, to trust, to be honest." Her smile faltered for half a second, barely noticeable. Then she recovered. "That's beautiful. I want that, with Jake." I nodded. "Then choose it. Every single day." She reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Her fingers were warm, soft.
the same fingers that had tangled in Mark's hair. "You're the best mom I could have asked for. Seriously, thank you for everything." I squeezed back. Anything for family. The word tasted like ash. That night, after dinner, Mark tried to touch me. We were in the kitchen loading the dishwasher. His hand slid around my waist from behind, lips brushing my neck. "Missed you today," he murmured. I stiffened, turned slowly, looked him in the eye. "Really?" He blinked. "Yeah, you okay?"
I studied his face, the faint lines around his eyes, the gray creeping into his stubble, the mouth that had kissed her so many times. "Just tired," I said. "Wedding stress." He kissed my forehead. "We'll get through it. Then things can go back to normal." Normal. I let him pull me close, let him hold me while the dishwasher hummed, but my arms stayed at my sides. I didn't hug him back. The next day was the final tape tasting. Sophie, Jake, Mark, and I met at the bakery downtown. The place smelled like vanilla and buttercream. The owner brought out slices, chocolate with raspberry filling, vanilla with lemon curd, red velvet with cream cheese. We all took small bites, made polite comments. Sophie fed Jake a forkful of the chocolate. He laughed, wiped frosting from her nose. They looked perfect, the kind of couple that makes older people sigh and remember their own youth. Mark watched them with a soft smile. Then he looked at me. Our eyes met. For a split second, something flickered in his expression. Guilt? Regret? Or just calculation? I looked away first. That evening, the house filled with relatives. My sister flew in from Portland. Mark's brother, David, had passed years ago, but his widow and their 2 kids drove up from Tacoma. The backyard became a reunion. String lights, coolers of beer, laughter echoing off the fence. Jake grilled steaks. Sophie played hostess, refilling drinks, charming everyone. I watched her move through the crowd like she already owned the place. She laughed at Mark's jokes, touched his arm when she passed him a plate, leaned in to whisper something that made him grin. No one else noticed. Or if they did, they chalked it up to close family. I excused myself early, said I had a headache, went upstairs, locked the bedroom door, and sat on the edge of the bed with my phone. I opened the evidence folder I'd created, added a new note. June 5th, 2025. Observed continued physical, flirtatious contact in front of family. No one questioned. Sophie refers to me as mom repeatedly. I stared at the words until they blurred. Downstairs, the music kept playing. Voices rose and fell. Someone yelled, "To Jake and Sophie." Glasses clinked. I didn't go back down. Instead, I opened my closet, pulled out the mother of the groom dress I'd bought 6 months ago, navy silk, elegant, understated. I held it up to the mirror. It still fit perfectly. I looked like the proud mother I was supposed to be. But the woman in the reflection wasn't proud anymore. She was furious, and she was done waiting for them to make the next move. 2 days until the rehearsal dinner. 1 day until the wedding. The clock was ticking, and I was no longer the one being kept in the dark.
The night before the wedding, our house felt like a pressure cooker with the lid rattling. Every room was alive with noise and movement. Relatives had flown in from all over. My sister Lisa from Portland, Mark's cousins from Chicago, Jake's college buddies crashing on air mattresses in the basement. The air smelled like garlic bread, fresh coffee, and too many competing perfumes. Laughter bounced off the walls. Someone was playing throwback 90s music in the backyard, and the fridge was so packed with casseroles and beer that the door wouldn't close properly. On the surface, it looked like the perfect pre-wedding chaos, the kind you see in movies, the kind I had dreamed about for years. Inside, I was unraveling thread by thread. I moved through the crowd like a ghost in my own home, smiling, refilling wine glasses, hugging aunts who kept saying, "Elena, you must be so proud." I answered on autopilot. I am, so proud. My voice sounded normal. My face looked normal in every mirror I passed, but my heart was hammering so hard I was sure someone would hear it. Jake found me in the kitchen around 8 o'clock. He looked handsome in a simple gray button-down, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from a shower. My boy, my only child. He pulled me into a hug that smelled like the cologne I'd buyed him for Christmas. "Mom," he said against my hair, "you okay? You've been quiet all week." I held him a second longer than usual, memorizing the solid feel of his shoulders, the way his voice still cracked just a little when he called me Mom. "Just wedding nerves, honey. Happens to every mother of the groom."
He pulled back and studied my face, those kind brown eyes searching. "You sure? You and Dad good?" The question hit like a slap. I forced a laugh. "Of course. Why wouldn't we be?" He shrugged, but the worry didn't leave his eyes. "I don't know. You just seem distant. And Sophie mentioned you've been a little off lately." Sophie. Of course she had. I reached up and brushed an invisible speck off his shoulder. "I'm fine, Jake. Really. Go enjoy your last night as a single man. Your buddies are waiting." He kissed my cheek. "I love you, Mom. Tomorrow's going to be perfect." "I love you more," I whispered. He walked away, already laughing at something one of his groomsmen yelled from the patio. I watched him go, throat tight. Perfect. That word again. If only he knew how far from perfect this night already was. Around 10, the house started to quiet. Guests drifted to their hotels or the basement. Mark played the gracious host, shaking hands, slapping backs, promising everyone the weather would hold for tomorrow. Sophie stayed later than she should have, helping clean up, stacking plates, laughing softly with Mark by the sink when they thought no one was watching. I watched from the hallway. At 11:15, she finally kissed Jake goodnight at the front door. Quick, sweet, the kind of kiss that looked innocent. Then she turned and hugged me. "Good night, Mom. Tomorrow I get to call you that for real." Her perfume wrapped around me like a noose. I smiled. "Sleep well, sweetheart." She left. Mark locked the front door and turned to me. "Big day tomorrow. You should get some rest." "I will," I said. "Just going to check on a few things upstairs." He nodded, already heading toward the study. "I'll be up soon." I went upstairs, but I didn't go to our bedroom. Instead, I slipped into the small guest bathroom at the end of the hall, the one no one ever used. I left the light off, sat on the closed toilet lid in the dark, and waited. 20 minutes passed. 30. Then I heard it, the soft creak of the guest room door down the hall. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the voice recorder app, and hit record. My hands were steady now, cold, clinical. I crept into the hallway on bare feet. The guest room door was pulled almost shut, but not quite. A thin line of warm lamplight spilled across the carpet. I pressed myself against the wall and listened. Mark's voice, low and hungry. "God, I've been waiting for this all day." Sophie's soft laugh. "You were so close to me at dinner, I thought I was going to lose it." A rustle of fabric, the unmistakable sound of kissing, deep, desperate, nothing like the polite peck she'd given Jake downstairs. "You're killing me in that dress," Mark groaned. "It's for you," she whispered. "Everything tomorrow is for show, but tonight is ours." My stomach twisted violently. I kept the phone raised, recording every word. Sophie's voice dropped even lower. "After tomorrow, it'll be different. Once the papers are signed, we can start the plan." "Shh, not yet. The walls are thin tonight." "I know, but I can't wait much longer. The insurance guy called me yesterday. Everything's in place, just like we talked about." Mark chuckled darkly. "You're dangerous, you know that? You made me this way." More kissing. The bed creaked. A soft moan escaped her. I had enough. I backed away slowly, heart slamming against my ribs, and slipped back into the guest bathroom. I stopped the recording, saved it, then emailed it to myself with the subject line, "Proof night before." My fingers were ice cold on the screen. I waited another 10 minutes until I heard the guest room door open and close again. Footsteps, Mark heading to our bedroom. I gave it 5 more minutes, then walked down the hall as if I'd just come from checking on relatives. Mark was already in bed when I entered our room, scrolling on his phone like nothing had happened. He looked up. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said, voice even, just making sure everyone has what they need. I changed into my nightgown, brushed my teeth, and climbed into bed beside him. He reached over and rested his hand on my hip. I let it stay there. I even turned and kissed him goodnight. Quick, dry, the way married couples do after decades together. But inside, I was screaming. They weren't just cheating. They were planning something bigger. After tomorrow, once the papers are signed, the insurance guy called. The words looped in my head like a siren. I lay awake long after Mark's breathing deepened into sleep. The digital clock on the nightstand glowed 2:47 a.m. Outside, the neighborhood was silent. Inside my chest, a storm was building. Tomorrow, my son would stand at the altar, believing he was marrying the love of his life. Tomorrow, I would have to decide whether to let the lie continue or burn the entire illusion to the ground in front of everyone we knew. I closed my eyes, but sleep never came. The night before the wedding wasn't about flowers or vows or first dances. It was about truth, and truth was finally demanding to be heard. I didn't sleep that night, not for one single minute. By 5:30 a.m., the sky outside our bedroom window was turning pale gray, the color of old steel. Mark was still snoring softly beside me, one arm flung across the pillow like he didn't have a care in the world. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning slow circles and felt something inside me shift from fear into ice-cold clarity. I had the recording, I had the messages, I had the insurance folder, but I needed more. I needed the full picture before the wedding guests started arriving at 11, before my son stood at the altar and said "I do" to a lie. At 6:12 a.m., I slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Mark. I pulled on yoga pants and a hoodie, grabbed my phone and the spare key to his study, and moved through the quiet house like a shadow. The study door clicked shut behind me. I didn't turn on the overhead light, just the small desk lamp that cast a weak golden pool across the mahogany surface. His laptop sat closed in the center, charging. I knew the password. It had always been Jake's birthday, 0314. I opened it. The desktop was neat, too neat. Folders labeled work, taxes, photos, insurance. I clicked on insurance first. Inside were PDF files. My life insurance policy, updated 6 months ago. Face value doubled. Premiums paid from our joint account. Primary beneficiary still listed as Mark Thompson. But there was a second document attached, an addendum I'd never seen. It included a clause about accelerated death benefits and a separate rider for catastrophic illness. My stomach turned. Next folder, finances, private. A joint checking account I'd never heard of, opened 2 years ago at a different bank in Tacoma. Account holders, Mark Thompson and Sophie Reynolds. Balance, $87,400. Regular transfers from our home equity line, $2,500 here, $4,000 there, all labeled consulting fees. Sophie didn't consult for Mark's insurance agency. She worked in marketing. I took screenshots of everything. My hands were steady now, moving on autopilot the way they did when I was running a code in the ER. Then I found the emails. A long thread with an attorney in Bellevue named Richard Harlan. Subject line, Estate Planning, Thompson Matter, Urgent Timeline. Mark had written, "We need to move faster than originally planned. Wedding is June 7. After that, things should simplify quickly. Confirm the policy change and the trust paperwork." The lawyer replied, "Understood. Once the marriage occurs and the beneficiary situation is locked, we can proceed with the next steps. I'll have the documents ready for signature by June 10. Next steps." I kept scrolling. Deeper in the sent folder, an unsent draft from Sophie's Gmail account that she must have forwarded to Mark for review, dated 3 weeks ago. "Hey babe, I know it sounds awful, but Elena's been unhappy for years. She works too much, drinks too much wine at night, complains about everything. Jake will get over it. He's young. Once we're in California, the money from the policy will set us up nicely. We can finally be together for real. This is mercy, not murder. She won't suffer. Love you forever. S." Mercy. She called it mercy. I sat back in Mark's leather chair, the word burning behind my eyes. They weren't just planning to leave me, they were planning to get rid of me. Quietly, cleanly, with paperwork and insurance payouts, and a story about a sad, overworked wife who couldn't handle it anymore. My vision tunneled. For a second, I thought I might pass out. Then the anger hit, white hot, pure, and sharper than any scalpel I'd ever held.
I copied every file, every email, every screenshot. I sent them to a new encrypted cloud drive I created on the spot, then deleted the sending record. I even wiped the browser history for good measure. By 7:45 a.m., the house was starting to wake up. I could hear Jake in the kitchen making coffee, relatives stirring in the guest rooms. I shut the laptop, locked the study, and went upstairs to shower. When I came down 20 minutes later, dressed in jeans and a simple white blouse, Mark was at the island pouring orange juice. He looked up and smiled. "There's my beautiful wife. Big day today." I looked at him, really looked. The man I had slept beside for 28 years. The man who had coached Jake's little league team, who had cried when his own father died, who had promised me forever on a beach in Hawaii. The same man who had typed the words, "Things should simplify quickly," about my death. "Big day," I echoed. Sophie arrived at 8:30, glowing in a soft pink robe, hair in rollers, makeup artist trailing behind her. She hugged me tight in the foyer. "Mom, can you believe it's finally here?" I hugged her back, inhaling that same floral perfume that had been on my husband's skin for years. "I can't believe it," I said quietly. "Today changes everything." She pulled away, searching my face for a second. Something flickered in her eyes. Nerves? Guilt? She covered it with a bright smile. "I'm so lucky to be joining this family." Lucky. I spent the next 2 hours smiling for photos, helping with zippers, pinning boutonnieres, and pretending my world wasn't on fire. Jake looked handsome in his tux, nervous and excited. He kept hugging me, telling me how much he loved me. Every time he did, another piece of my heart broke off. At 10:45, the limos arrived. Everyone piled in. I rode with Jake and his groomsmen. Mark rode with Sophie and her bridesmaids. The church was only 15 minutes away, but it felt like the longest drive of my life. When we pulled up, the parking lot was already full. Guests in pastel dresses and dark suits milled around, taking pictures under the blooming dogwood trees. The string quartet was warming up. Everything looked perfect. I stood at the back of the church in my navy silk dress, the one I'd tried on in the mirror the night before. My hands were steady. My pulse was not. The officiant, Pastor Reynolds, no relation, greeted us warmly. "Ready for the big moment?" I smiled. "More ready than you know." The ceremony began. Guests took their seats. The music swelled. Jake stood at the altar, handsome and hopeful. Mark walked Sophie down the aisle. She looked radiant in white lace, veil floating behind her like a cloud. When they reached the front, Mark lifted her veil, kissed her cheek, and handed her off to Jake. I watched every second. The officiant began the service. Vows, rings, the part where he asked if anyone had any objection. The church fell silent. I stepped forward from my seat in the front row. Every head turned. My voice rang out clear and calm, carrying to the very last pew. "Mark? Sophie, I have something to say." Gasps rippled through the sanctuary. I pulled my phone from my clutch, tapped play on the recording from last night. Their voices filled the church. Intimate, unmistakable, damning. "You're killing me in that dress. After tomorrow, it'll be different, once the papers are signed." The insurance got called. Sophie's moan. Mark's stark chuckle. I stopped the audio. Then I held up the printed screenshots, messages, bank transfers, the lawyer emails, Sophie's unsent draft about mercy. The church erupted. Sophie's face strained of color. She stumbled backward. Mark lunged toward me. "Elena, this is insane." I looked straight at my son. Jake stood frozen at the altar, eyes wide with horror. "Jake," I said, voice breaking for the first time, "I'm so sorry." He stared at Sophie. "How long?" She started crying. It just happened. He was helping me." Jake turned to his father. "Dad." Mark's shoulders slumped. The mask finally cracked. "I love her, son. I never meant for any of this to." Jake's fist flew before anyone could stop him. The crack of bone on bone echoed off the stained glass windows. Chaos exploded. Guests screamed. Phones came out. Security from the church rushed forward. Sophie tried to run down the side aisle in her wedding gown. Mark grabbed her arm, then let go when Jake shoved him again. I stood in the middle of the storm, dressed perfect, hair perfect, heart shattered into a million pieces. The wedding was over before it ever began, and the truth, ugly, brutal, and 4 years in the making, had finally destroyed everything I thought I knew about my family, my marriage, and the people I loved most.
The church smelled like lilies, candle wax, and expensive perfume. Sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, painting colorful patterns across the white runner that led to the altar. 200 guests sat in polished pews, whispering excitedly, fanning themselves with the wedding programs that featured a photo of Jake and Sophie laughing on the beach. Everything looked exactly the way it was supposed to look on the most important day of my son's life. But I wasn't watching the flowers or the candles or the string quartet playing Pachelbel's canon. I was watching my husband walk Sophie down the aisle. Mark looked handsome in his charcoal tuxedo, silver at his temples catching the light. Sophie was radiant in her strapless lace gown, veil trailing behind her like a dream. She held his arm tightly, smiling up at him with that same soft, adoring expression she used to give Jake. When they reached the front, Mark lifted her veil, leaned in, and kissed her cheek a second too long. The guest sighed, thinking it was sweet, a father-in-law's blessing. I knew better. Jake stood tall at the altar, eyes shining with pure love as he took Sophie's hands. My beautiful boy, 25 years old, believing this was the start of forever. He glanced at me in the front row and gave me a quick, nervous smile. I tried to smile back, but my face felt frozen. Pastor Reynolds began the ceremony with warm words about love, commitment, and blending families. Every sentence landed like a stone in my stomach. "Marriage is built on trust," he said. I almost laughed out loud. Today, Jake and Sophie choose each other with the full support of their families. Support. Right. I sat perfectly still in my navy silk dress, hands folded in my lap, the printed evidence folder resting inside my clutch like a loaded gun. My phone was charged, the recording from last night queued up and ready. My heart beat so hard I was sure the people next to me could hear it. The vows started. Jake went first, voice steady and full of emotion. "Sophie, from the moment I met you, I knew you were the one. You make me want to be better every day. I promise to love you, protect you, and build a life with you." Sophie's turn. Her voice trembled beautifully. "Jake, you are my best friend, my safe place. I can't wait to spend every tomorrow with you." Safe place. The words burned. I thought of all the nights she'd snuck into our guest room while Jake was away on business. All the times she'd called Mark dangerous and alive in those texts. The officiant smiled. "If anyone here has any reason why these two should not be married, speak now or forever hold your peace." The church fell silent. Fans stopped waving. Even the babies seemed to quiet. This was the moment. I stood up. My heels clicked once on the hardwood floor as I stepped into the aisle. 200 heads turned. Gasps rippled through the crowd like a wave. Mark's face went pale. Sophie's eyes widened in pure panic. "Elena?" Pastor Reynolds said, confused. "Is everything all right?" I looked straight at the altar. My voice came out clear, calm, and carrying to every corner of the sanctuary. "Mark, Sophie, before my son says I do, I have something you both need to hear." I pulled out my phone and hit play. Their voices filled the church, intimate, breathless, unmistakable. "Mark, God, I've been waiting for this all day.
Sophie, you were so close to me at dinner, I thought I was going to lose it. The sound of kissing, fabric rustling, the bed creaking. Sophie, after tomorrow it'll be different. Once the papers are signed, we can start the plan. Shh, not yet. Sophie, the insurance guy called yesterday. Everything's in place. A soft moan, Mark's low chuckle. I stopped the recording. Dead silence.
Then I reached into my clutch and held up the stack of printed pages, screenshots of 4 years of messages, hotel receipts, bank transfers to their secret joint account, the lawyer emails about simplifying things quickly, and Sophie's own unsent draft calling my planned death an act of mercy. I have 4 years of proof, I said, my voice steady even though my hands were shaking. Messages, photos, videos, financial records, insurance policies doubled on my life, a secret account with almost $90,000, plans to move to California after they collected the payout. The church exploded. People gasped. Some stood up. A few women cried out. Phones started coming out, recording the disaster. Sophie's legs buckled. She grabbed the altar for support, veil slipping sides. It's not what it looks like. Mark stepped forward, face red with fury and fear. Elena, put that away. You're ruining everything. I looked at him coldly. No, Mark, you ruined everything. 4 years ago, when you started sleeping with your son's girlfriend. Jake stood frozen at the altar, eyes wide, face drained of all color. He looked from me to Sophie to his father, like he was watching a nightmare he couldn't wake up from. Mom? His voice cracked. Is this real? I met my son's eyes, and for the first time that day, my own tears threatened to spell. I'm so sorry, Jake. I wish it wasn't.
Sophie started sobbing loudly. Jake, please, it just happened. Your dad was there for me when you were traveling. He understood me. It got out of control. Out of control? Jake's voice rose. You've been fucking my father for 4 years, behind my back, while planning our wedding? Mark tried to speak. Son, listen. Jake didn't let him finish. He stepped forward and punched his father square in the jaw. The sound cracked through the sanctuary like a gunshot. Mark stumbled backward into the floral arrangements, knocking over a candelabra. Wax and petals scattered everywhere. Chaos erupted. Guests screamed. Some rushed toward the altar. Others stood in shock. Sophie tried to run down the side aisle, tripping over her long train. 2 bridesmaids grabbed her arms. Mark clutched his bleeding lip, yelling, "This is insane. She's lying." I stayed where I was, standing tall in the aisle while the perfect wedding dissolved into pure pandemonium around me. Security from the church finally pushed through the crowd. They separated Jake from Mark before another punch could land. Sophie was crying hysterically, mascara running down her face in black rivers. Jake stood breathing hard, knuckles bleeding, staring at the woman he thought he was going to marry. Pastor Reynolds looked completely lost, Bible still open in his hands. I walked slowly up to the altar. The crowd parted for me. I stopped in front of Sophie and Mark. "Look at what you did," I said quietly, just loud enough for them to hear. To him, to us, to everything. Then I turned to my son. "Jake, I love you, more than anything. We'll get through this." He looked at me, eyes glassy with shock and betrayal. For a moment, I thought he might collapse. Instead, he nodded once, jaw tight. The wedding was over. No vows, no kiss. No, you may now kiss the bride. Just truth exploding like a bomb in the middle of what was supposed to be the happiest day of my son's life. As the guests slowly filed out, whispering and filming, I stood in the wreckage of flowers and broken dreams and felt something strange settle over me. Relief. Not happiness, not peace, but the cold, clear relief that comes when the pretending finally stops and the lies are dragged into the light. The wedding day I had planned for months had been destroyed in less than 10 minutes, and for the first time in 4 years, I could finally breathe. The church emptied slowly, like a theater after a horror movie no one had paid to see. Guests spilled out onto the sunny lawn in clusters, whispering, hugging, checking their phones. Some were crying. Others looked stunned, as if they'd just witnessed a car crash. A few kept glancing back at me, like I was the villain in my own story. I didn't care. I stood on the steps in my navy silk dress, clutching my clutch like a shield, while the June breeze tugged at my hair. Inside, the sanctuary looked like a battlefield. Overturned candelabras, scattered rose petals, a broken vase leaking water across the carpet. Jake sat on the front pew, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. His knuckles were split and bleeding. Blood had dripped onto his crisp white shirt. He hadn't moved since the security guards pulled him off his father. Mark leaned against the far wall, ice wrapped in a white napkin pressed to his swelling jaw. His left eye was already turning purple. Sophie huddled in a corner with two bridesmaids, wedding gown torn at the hem, veil long gone, mascara streaked down her face like war paint. She kept sobbing the same words over and over. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I walked down the aisle toward my son. My heels clicked on the hardwood, loud in the sudden quiet. When I reached him, I sat beside him without speaking. For a long minute, neither of us said anything. Finally, Jake lifted his head. His eyes were red, devastated. "How long, Mom? Really?" "4 years," I said softly, "since before you two even met officially." He let out a shaky breath that sounded like it hurt. "And you knew?" "I found out 3 weeks ago, the night I came home early and caught them in the guest room." Jake closed his eyes. "Jesus Christ." I reached over and gently took his injured hand. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you sooner. I needed proof. I needed to be sure before I blew up your entire life." He nodded once, jaw tight. "You did the right thing. I can't believe it. My own father, with her." From across the room, Mark's voice cracked. "Jake, son, please let me explain." "Explain?" Jake shot up so fast the pew creaked. "You've been sleeping with my fiancé for 4 fucking years? You helped plan my wedding while you were planning to, what, kill Mom for the insurance money?" Mark flinched. "It wasn't like that. Things got out of hand. I never wanted anyone to get hurt." Sophie started crying louder. "Mark, tell him the truth. We love each other. We were going to figure it out after." "After what?" Jake roared. "After you cashed in on Mom's life insurance? After you moved to California together? You both make me sick." Security stepped in again, keeping distance between them. I stayed seated, watching my family disintegrate in real time. The next few hours blurred into a nightmare of logistics. The reception venue had to be canceled, deposits lost, vendors called. My sister Lisa took charge, quietly handling phone calls while I sat with Jake in the church office. We drank warm bottled water and stared at the wall. He kept asking the same questions I'd asked myself for weeks. Why didn't I see it?
How could they do this to us? What the hell do I do now? I had no perfect answers, only the truth. We grieve, we get angry, then we rebuild, one day at a time. By late afternoon, the church was empty, except for the 4 of us and Pastor Reynolds, who looked like he'd aged 10 years. Mark finally left with his brother's widow, head down, refusing to meet anyone's eyes. Sophie was driven away by her bridesmaids, still in the ruined wedding dress, looking small and broken. That night, Jake and I went back to the house. The backyard still had string lights up. Tables were set with untouched centerpieces and favor succulents. The wedding cake sat in the kitchen, 3 tiers of vanilla and raspberry, topper still in place, 2 little figures holding hands. Jake stared at it for a long time, then picked up the cake knife and drove it straight through the middle, splitting the happy couple in half. We didn't sleep. We sat on the living room couch until sunrise, talking, crying, raging. He told me every small moment he now saw in a different light. The time Sophie canceled plans last minute, the way Mark always offered to help her with wedding stuff, the late-night text she'd smile at when she thought he wasn't looking. "I feel so stupid," he kept saying. "You're not stupid," I told him. "You trusted the 2 people who were supposed to love you most. That's not stupidity. That's being human." The divorce papers were filed the following Monday. I hired a shark of an attorney who moved fast. Mark didn't fight the house or the savings much. He was too busy trying to save what was left of his reputation. His insurance agency clients started dropping him. Old friends stopped returning calls. The story spread like wildfire through Bellevue and Seattle. Did you hear about the Thompson wedding? Became the new gossip.
Sophie disappeared for a while. She moved out of the condo she shared with Jake and went back east to stay with a cousin in Boston. Last I heard through mutual friends, she lost her marketing job after the scandal went viral on local social media. Someone had posted the church audio. It had over 2 million views. Jake moved in with me temporarily. We sold the big house faster than expected. Too many bad memories. We bought a smaller, modern condo downtown with a view of Lake Washington. No guest room, no study, just clean lines and new beginnings. Therapy started the second week, twice a week for both of us. Jake's anger came in waves. Some days he punched the gym bag until his hands bled again. Other days he sat on the balcony staring at nothing. I held him when he cried. He held me when I finally let myself fall apart in the shower, sobbing so hard I couldn't breathe. Mark tried to reach out once, a long email full of excuses and half apologies. I forwarded it to my lawyer and blocked him everywhere. Jake did the same. 6 weeks after the non-wedding, Sophie showed up at our new condo unannounced. She looked thinner, eyes hollow, wearing jeans and a plain gray sweater instead of designer clothes. Jake refused to see her. I let her in anyway. We sat on the couch. She twisted her hands in her lap. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I never meant for it to go this far." I looked at her, the girl I had once welcomed as a daughter. "You planned my death, Sophie. You called it mercy." She started crying again. "Mark said you were unhappy. He said we'd all be better off. I was stupid. I was in love with him, or I thought I was." Love. That word felt poisoned now. She left after 20 minutes. I never saw her again. The divorce finalized in October. Mark got almost nothing. He moved into a cheap one-bedroom apartment near the airport. Last I heard, he was selling used cars and drinking too much. Jake started dating again slowly. Nothing serious yet. He focused on work, on healing, on late-night talks with me on the balcony, where we watched the ferries cross the Sound. As for me, I went back to the hospital. Longer shifts at first, because the nights were still hard. But slowly, the nightmares faded. The anger cooled into something quieter. Resolve. I sold my wedding rings, bought myself a small gold necklace with a single diamond, a reminder that I survived. The aftermath wasn't pretty. It was messy, painful, and public, but it was honest. And for the first time in years, our little family of 2 was built on truth, instead of beautiful, deadly lies. The first 6 months after the wedding that never was felt like learning to walk again after a car wreck. Everything hurt, everything was new, and nothing fit the way it used to. Jake and I moved into the downtown condo in late July. It was smaller than the big house in Bellevue, just 2 bedrooms, an open living room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Lake Washington, and a narrow balcony where we drank coffee every morning. No guest room, no study with locked doors, no reminders of the life we'd lost. The walls were painted a calm dove gray, and the only decorations we put up at first were a couple of framed photos of Jake as a little boy with me, before Mark, before Sophie, before the lies. Jake took the master bedroom. I took the smaller one. Some nights I heard him pacing at 3 a.m., replaying everything in his head. Other nights it was me. We never complained about the other's insomnia. We just made tea or poured whiskey and sat together until the sky turned pink. Therapy was non-negotiable. I found Dr. Patel, a calm Indian-American woman in her 50s who specialized in betrayal trauma. Jake saw her too, on different days. At first he hated it. "I'm not the one who cheated," he'd grumble. But after a few sessions, he started opening up. He admitted he felt stupid, emasculated, like he'd been the punchline of a 4-year joke. He raged about his father. He cried about Sophie. He questioned every happy memory from the last few years. I sat in my own sessions and let myself fall apart. I told Dr. Patel about the nights I lay awake listening to them in the guest room, about the insurance papers, about the word mercy. I cried until my throat was raw. She never rushed me. She just handed me tissues and said, "Elena, you didn't fail."
You survived the unthinkable. By September, Jake started running again, early mornings along the waterfront trail. I joined a yoga class at the community center. Small things, normal things, the kind of routines that slowly stitch a person back together. We talked about everything, no more secrets. One night in October, over Thai takeout on the balcony, Jake finally asked the question I'd been dreading. "Mom, did you ever suspect anything before that Friday?" I set my fork down. The city lights sparkled on the water below us. I ignored a lot, I admitted. The late nights, the inside jokes, the way he lit up when she walked in. I told myself it was harmless, that I was being paranoid because I worked long hours. I trusted him. I trusted her. My voice cracked. I was wrong. Jake reached over and squeezed my hand. We both were. That was the night we decided to stop saying, "I'm fine." From then on, if something hurt, we said it out loud. If we needed space, we asked for it. If we needed to scream, we drove to the empty parking lot at the old Boeing field and yelled until our voices gave out. Mark tried to crawl back into our lives a few times. He sent flowers on my birthday with a card that said, "I'm sorry for everything." I threw them in the dumpster. He called Jake on Thanksgiving, drunk, crying about how he'd lost his son. Jake hung up without a word. The last attempt came in December, a long email begging for a meeting to make things right. We forwarded it to our lawyers and changed our numbers.
Sophie stayed gone. She never tried to contact Jake again after that one visit to the condo. I heard through a mutual friend that she'd moved to New York, changed her last name, and was working some low-level job in retail. The bright, ambitious girl who once called me mom had disappeared. Good riddance. Christmas that year was quiet, just Jake and me. We bought a small artificial tree and decorated it with ornaments from his childhood. No big family dinner, no forced smiles. We cooked steak and watched old movies. When It's a Wonderful Life came on, Jake muted the TV during the happy ending. "I used to believe in that stuff," he said softly. "Happy endings, true love, all of it." I put my arm around him. "Happy endings still exist, honey. They just look different after the storm." He leaned his head on my shoulder like he was 10 years old again. "I'm glad I still have you." "Always," I whispered. In January, Jake started seeing someone new, a quiet software engineer named Mia he met at work. She was kind, funny, and had no idea about the scandal until he told her himself on their third date. She didn't run. She listened. Slowly, carefully, he let himself trust again. I liked her. She made him laugh in a way Sophie never had. Real, easy laughter that reached his eyes. As for me, I threw myself back into nursing. I took on extra shifts in the cardiac unit, mentored new grads, and even started teaching a monthly class on recognizing emotional abuse. The irony wasn't lost on me. Helping other women spot the red flags I'd missed for years became strangely healing. One rainy afternoon in March, almost 10 months after the wedding day, I stood in my bedroom holding the gold necklace I'd bought with the money from selling my old wedding rings. A single diamond caught the light. Simple, strong, mine. I clasped it around my neck and looked in the mirror. The woman staring back had new lines around her eyes and a few more gray hairs, but her shoulders were straighter. Her gaze was clearer. She wasn't the trusting wife anymore. She wasn't the perfect mother of the groom. She was something better, someone who had walked through fire and come out the other side, still standing. Jake knocked on the doorframe. "Hey, you ready? Mia's waiting downstairs. We're doing that new sushi place." I smiled at him in the mirror. "Yeah, I'm ready." We walked out together into the Seattle drizzle. No big announcements, no dramatic declarations, just two people who had lost almost everything and were slowly, stubbornly building something real. Rebuilding wasn't loud or glamorous. It was quiet mornings with coffee on the balcony. It was therapy bills and late-night talks. It was learning to trust again in small doses. It was choosing truth over comfort every single day. But day by day, week by week, we were doing it.
The family I thought I'd lost forever had shrunk to just the two of us, and somehow that made it stronger than it had ever been. 1 year later, almost to the day the wedding exploded, I stood on the balcony of our condo with a glass of Pinot Noir in my hand and watched the sun sink behind the Olympic Mountains. The sky was painted in soft pinks and oranges, the kind of Seattle sunset that makes you forget how gray the winters can be. Jake and Mia were inside making dinner, laughing about something that happened at work. Their voices drifted out through the open sliding door. Easy, warm, real. For the first time in a long time, the sound didn't make my chest ache. I took a slow sip of wine and touched the thin gold necklace at my throat. The single diamond felt cool against my skin, a quiet reminder that I had survived the unthinkable and come out the other side still breathing. My name is still Elena Thompson, 53 now, still a nurse practitioner in the cardiology unit at Overlake, still a mother, still standing. But I am not the same woman who walked into that house on that Friday evening in May and found her husband with her son's fiancée. That woman died the moment I pushed open the guest room door. In her place is someone sharper, quieter, and far less willing to look away from ugly truths. The divorce is long final. Mark got what he deserved, almost nothing. The house sold, the savings were split. His reputation in the insurance world is ruined. Last I heard, through a mutual acquaintance, he's selling cars at a dealership out in Renton and still drinking too much on weekends. He tried reaching out again on Jake's birthday this year. A short text, "I miss my son." Jake read it, showed it to me, then blocked the number without replying. Some bridges don't deserve to be rebuilt. Sophie vanished completely. No social media, no mutual friends willing to talk about her. The last rumor I heard placed her somewhere in upstate New York, working at a coffee shop and going by her middle name. The bright, ambitious 26-year-old who once called me mom and helped pick out wedding centerpieces is gone. I don't miss her. I don't hate her anymore either. She's just nothing to me now. A ghost from a chapter I finally closed.
Jake is doing better than I ever dared hope. He and Mia have been together 9 months. She's gentle with him, patient with his trust issues, and she never pushes when the old memories surface. Last month, they took a weekend trip to Cannon Beach, the same Oregon coast where we used to vacation when he was little. He came back tan and smiling, showing me pictures on his phone. For the first time in over a year, his eyes looked light again. Therapy continues, but the sessions are farther apart now. The rage has cooled into something manageable. The shame has faded. He still has bad nights, but they're fewer. He told me recently, "I used to think the worst thing that could happen was losing Sophie. Turns out the worst thing was believing the lie. Now I know the truth, and that feels like freedom." I'm proud of him in a way that has nothing to do with grades or career achievements. He chose honesty over comfort. He chose healing over bitterness. That takes more strength than most people ever develop. As for me, I work my shifts. I mentor the new nurses. I teach that monthly class on spotting emotional abuse and financial control, because I refuse to let what happened to me stay hidden in the dark. Some of the women who attend look at me with wide eyes when I share pieces of my story. I don't give them the sensational details, but I give them the truth. If something feels wrong, trust that feeling. Don't wait 4 years for proof. Don't wait until the wedding day. I go on occasional dates now. Nothing serious yet. A kind cardiologist from the hospital took me to dinner last month. He was funny, respectful, and didn't push when I said I needed to take things slow. Maybe something will grow there. Maybe not. For the first time in decades, I'm not rushing to fill the empty space. I'm learning to sit with it, to enjoy my own company, to be enough on my own. Some nights I still wake up at 2 a.m. with my heart racing, convinced I hear whispers from the guest room. I lie there in the dark, breathe through it, and remind myself, that house is gone. Those people no longer have power over me. The truth set me free, even if the freeing hurt like hell. Last week, Jake and I drove out to the old neighborhood. We didn't stop at the house, just slowed down as we passed it. A new family lives there now. Kids' bikes in the driveway. A basketball hoop where Mark used to shoot hoops with Jake on summer evenings. We didn't speak for a long minute. Then Jake reached over and squeezed my hand. "We made it, Mom." "Yeah," I said. "We did." We drove away without looking back. Life isn't the fairy tale I once believed in. Love isn't blind trust wrapped in a white dress and wedding vows. Family isn't blood or marriage certificates or perfect Christmas cards. It's the people who stay when the masks fall off. It's the ones who choose truth, even when it shatters everything. I lost a husband of 28 years.
I lost the daughter-in-law I thought I'd gained. I lost the illusion of a perfect family. I lost the version of myself who believed love was enough if you just tried hard enough. But I gained something better. I gained a son who is now my best friend. I gained a strength I never knew I possessed. I gained the courage to look at my life with clear eyes and say never again. If you're reading this and something in your own life feels off, if the laughter sounds forced, if the touches feel wrong, if the "I love you" comes with too many conditions, listen. Listen hard, because the truth, no matter how brutal, is the only thing that can set you free. Sometimes freedom looks like standing up in a church full of people and burning down the lie. Sometimes it looks like selling the house and moving downtown. Sometimes it looks like quiet mornings on a balcony with your son, watching the fairies cross the water while the healing slowly happens. I still believe in love.
But now I believe in a different kind, the kind that survives the fire, the kind that chooses honesty over comfort, the kind that refuses to look away. I thought I had lost everything that mattered on that wedding day. Turns out, I only lost what was never real. What remains is worth so much more. My name is Elena Thompson. I am 53 years old. I am no longer anyone's fool. And for the first time in my life, I am finally truly free.